metaphors. Where are we?
The final theory is perhaps the bleakest, that Louis Le Prince simply didn't want to be found. This is the theory of Louis's great-nephew, who is the grandson of Albert. The theory goes that Louis was greatly in debt, to the tune of $84,000 by today's standards. During the mid-1870s, Louis gave a bad loan to Lizzie's family business that didn't pan out. Toward the end,
Seeing the guy just being like, oh, and just as he shoots the other guy, being like,
by January 25th, King George III had pardoned Smith, requiring him to serve a 1-year sentence of hard labor instead of hanging. I'd say that's a hell of a cutoff from hanging to your death to being like, hey, pick up some trash for a year.
I mean, it does sound like he was genuinely remorseful.
Well, if this were true, then why have I never heard of him? Maybe you were never supposed to. Because on one fateful afternoon, on Monday, September 16th, 1890, Louis Le Prince would step onto a train and never be seen again. A vanishing that would essentially wipe him from the history books. Let's start from the beginning. Louis Le Prince was born in the northeastern city of Metz, France on August 28th, 1841. Louis was a student of art, chemistry.
Said and he murdered someone.
I think this guy got off with a little slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Consider what could have been the alternative.
I mean, 200 years ago, though, hard labor, probably hard.
While Smith escaped the gallows for shooting the unfortunately dressed Millwood, there's still an unsettled matter at the heart of this story. Who was the ghost of Hammersmith? Our first theory is the ghost was nothing more and then traveled back to New York to meet his family and show his invention. With him, Louis only carried a black suitcase. According to Christopher Rollins, author of a book on the case, the suitcase contained some rather important documents. Inside the suitcase was Louis's latest work on his patents. At the time, Louis was still tweaking his patents on his single-lens camera to further protect himself from the theft of his inventions. As Louis's assistant, Frederick Mason, would remind reporters decades later, not only did Louis disappear, one appearance of the ghost on December 29th, leading to our next theory.
Look, you can never make sweeping judgments like this, but I would say him feeling protective of his children like that makes me think that he wouldn't hug a pregnant woman to death.
No, don't read spooky stories to my children.
You spooked my boys!
Can you imagine if someone came up to us in the middle of the street and yelled that at us?
They have!
My children won't stop watching you on the YouTube and now they won't sleep.
It's a kind of a...
It's a big straw.
Desperately hoping that their father is still alive.
Yeah. During the trial, Adolphe proved the films had been made prior to October 24th, 1888, by producing his grandmother's death certificate dated on that day, as she appears in one of the films. Yet, this wasn't totally incontrovertible proof that the single-lens camera built by Louis was the same one that took the films in 1888. When examining Louis's patents, the lawyers in the case he hoped could create what we now call movies. It's thought that Louis began building and testing an early version of his single-lens camera soon after. According to Louis's daughter Marie, who was a teenager at the time, she recalled seeing her father project moving images on a wall in their workshop as early as 1886. This was long before Thomas Edison had even begun conceptualizing motion picture designs about 2 years later. In 1886, Louis applied for a United States patent for his 16-lens camera that included great in Sonoma, California, as part of our ongoing investigation into the question, are ghosts real? This mission is the site of many tragic deaths, contributing surely to the high population of ghosts and alleged history of demonic possession in Sonoma County.
making it my one demonic investigation sacrifice for the season.
So it's a Ghostopolis with maybe a demon mayor.
You use whatever scenario you want to make your silly little game in your head. And once it's done, I'm happy, and we can move on with our lives. I go wash my hands of the demondom, go take a shower, light some candles. I'll get up.
And then forcing them to work in agriculture and European trades was a way of building a peasant class of laborers. Additionally, they worked to assimilate indigenous peoples to European customs and ideas, believing their lifestyle was the superior one. During the time of Spanish colonization in the region, they built 21 Franciscan missions, and the last of them is the one we're investigating now, which was established in 1823. The Mission San Francisco Solano was actually founded illegitimately through into the clues in the poem. Ben has also dropped helpful hints. Here's a couple of the notable ones. The treasure sits between 5,000 feet and 10,200 feet, so topographical maps are necessary. It's not in a graveyard, outhouse, mine, tunnel, or cave, nor is it associated with any structure. The treasure is located in either Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, or New Mexico, and is at least 8.25 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Of the 4 states listed by Fenn, I tend to lean towards New Mexico or Wyoming. Wyoming because a majority of Yellowstone National Park resides within that state, and Yellowstone was
By like putting lights under them, like Nick
He's
Cage.
just filling cavities.
He's just filling cavities,
Yeah.
drilling. He's going to drill town.
Maybe cutting a head off here.
That's the worst he's done. So, as I said to you, when this was a mission, there was an unfortunate amount of deaths here.
Yeah.
And they didn't really bury them, I would say, properly. They buried them in unidentified mass graves, so you could just see names here. And we're standing over where the grave may have been. It was said to be next to the church back in the day, and the chapel's right here, so. It's a long night.
I feel kind of stupid. But here you go.
I got one last piece here.
Dress for the job you want, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't laugh. You look like Owen Grady from Jurassic World. You happy with that look?
I'm happy with my look.
Are you?
I'm actually pretty happy with yours too.
Just think, when they take our picture for the paper, this is what we're going to be wearing. So right now we're traveling to the location of the first clue.
Into the question, are ghosts real? This prison has seen its fair share of death, despair, and famous outlaws.
We're seasoned vets at this point when it comes to prisons. Huh?
We are. We've been to several prisons, but we haven't been to an Old West prison.
That's true. A fun little way to mix it up there.
Yeah, a way to see ghouls behind bars that were good with a stick shooter.
Cool.
Constructed in 1870.
While listening to what he had to say, should have Shiratori explained that he didn't actually mind being in prison, and that the only reason he escaped twice now was due to the tremendous abuse he suffered at the hands of the sadistic guards. Kobayashi, however, was the only one who treated him with any amount of respect, and so he felt he owed it to him to let him in on his grand plan. Now, this plan involved Shiratori willingly, yes, handing himself over to the Justice Department, where he could then personally make a case for how corrupt and barbaric. Now, Shiratori requested to be sent to a Tokyo prison, where the weather was warmer, as he couldn't stand the cold in the northern prisons. His previous stint had weakened him severely, but he was denied his request. Instead, the judge sentenced him to the infamous Abashiri prison in Hokkaido, the northernmost prison in Japan. No man had ever escaped from this wintry hellhole of a prison. It was now a sealed skylight high above. This was a room designed to keep escape artists from escaping, and if that wasn't enough, the guards also made sure that Shiratori was handcuffed at all times. Now, despite the constant abuse, one of the guards, Kobayashi, in fact the head guard, took pity on him. Kobayashi never laid a finger, and even seemed to check up on him from time to time, concerned for his well-being. Perhaps this made life a little more bearable for Shiratori, and it might have even been what kept his will alive all the way to the night of June 15th. It was a stormy night. Incredible strength, almost superhuman strength. Back in Akita prison, he could have broken free of the cuffs the physical way if he didn't have to put them back on. Now, this was impressive, but it wasn't so smart to lay his cards on the table like that, as the guards were starting to build an escape profile on him. They knew he had lock-picking abilities, lizard-like climbing abilities, and now almost superhuman strength. And so they set out to devise the ultimate escape-proof cell. One of the guards peered into the cell and couldn't believe his eyes. He opened the cell door and looked around in astonishment, as Yoshie Shiratori had vanished into thin air. All that was left was his handcuffs. So how did he do it? Well, there were a few assumptions the guards made that did not apply to Shiratori. For one, handcuffs simply didn't work on him. Shiratori was actually a master of getting out of handcuffs, and in fact had several methods to choose from. Here, he decided to go with the familiar lock-picking, certainly with the metal support ring that was wrapped around the bathing buckets inmates used to wash themselves. His hands were stiff from the wintry cold, but after a few minutes of picking, he had success, and his cell door swung open. But he wasn't out of the woods yet, because there were more locked doors ahead. He knew he only had a few minutes left before the guards would return, and so he wasted no time attempting to pick his way through the remaining security doors.
Shoved it in his face, which seems kind of like overkill at that point. I imagine. I don't know how many seconds you have left to be alive after your heart is being ripped out. Unless you just really just beat it. We're gonna go visit her prison cell. Whoa! As well as Pearl Hart. Okay. So if anybody is in here that would like to communicate with us, perhaps Pearl or maybe Elena, feel free to do